Tech Talk with Mathew Dickerson. Mathew Dickerson.
So let's get stuck into it. COVID tests, we all hate them. I've been fortunate, Matt. I've only ever had one. How many have you had so far?
I've actually had zero. I've been even more fortunate. I've managed to avoid them altogether. So how much fun was that COVID test that you had?
Oh, it was a barrel of fun. The feeling of like you know when you were a kid and you kind of dived into the pool the wrong way, and then all of a sudden there's this backup of pressure and water that you feel in the back of your throat and your nose.
Yeah.
That's the COVID test.
Yep.
Yeah.
All that water rushing up your nose when you haven't quite learned to hold your breath at the right time when you're jumping in the pool. I like that description. That's probably pretty accurate, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, that is the most accurate description I can give. But now there's going to be a new test where you're not going to have that sensation anymore.
No, it's going to be very disappointing for some people, but for most people, it'll be fantastic. And I'm sure people have not had a test when maybe they should have had a test, or they've had fewer tests than they should have had because it is such an unpleasant experience. And research around the world has been going on for a whole range of things with COVID. Obviously, I'm sure has taken up so much research time around the world, but this particular one I think is absolutely fantastic, trying to work out a much easier test and getting to the point where a breath test is good enough to be able to get a COVID-19 result. Now, we get pulled over on the side of the road, they can check our blood alcohol level with a little machine that sits in the policeman's hand, so surely we should be able to get a COVID test. And they are at that point now. They've been undertaking some trials in Dubai and Amsterdam and Singapore, but Singapore now has finally approved the COVID-19 breath test, and it gives near enough immediate results. I think it takes about a minute to get a result out of it, which is much better than a COVID test. My daughter came home recently and had to wait about 2 days before she finally got her COVID test. It seems like a long time to wait to get a result from that. So this is the idea here. You breathe into it, you get a result a minute later, happy days, away you go. They're running some screening tests at the moment in Singapore at one of the entry points at one of the airports. They'll do those tests from a breath test perspective. If that test shows that you're positive, they'll then go and do a more traditional test just to compare the results to see that they are matching. If it's a negative, though, they've got enough confidence in the testing process that you can just continue on your merry way, which is exactly what we need to get to that point. And I can see this being really important for opening up borders around the world. You can imagine the likes of Qantas being desperate for something like this, so that if you had some breath tests as you flew into a country, or in fact before you flew out of a country. So imagine sitting there at Sydney Airport, you're about to fly overseas. Here, breathe into this. Sorry, you're positive. Sit back on the bench for 2 weeks and then we'll consider you again. That, to me, would be a really effective way to start to open up the borders. So this is really important across the world in trying to combat COVID-19 and get our world back to, dare I say it, whatever normal might look like in the future.
Yeah, I think all these kind of tests that, you get on the plane, you do a test, you get off the plane, you do a test, is going to be the thing that, is going to be in our new normal now. I can't not see something like that not being instated throughout the world, because they're all talking now, Matt, that this is going to be something we're going to have to live with.
Live with forever-ish, maybe? So, if we're going to do that, we need some much more effective ways. Sure, having a vaccine, having normal sort of processes in place where we might just not shake hands as much with people, not give big hugs and kisses to people we haven't seen for a while, but having the ability to continue to check, continue to test, continue to monitor, I think that's a really important part of it.
Yeah. Now, when is a big TV a big TV? We all want big TVs, Matt.
We want a big TV. I think I've got a big TV in my lounge room, but I don't have a 1,000-inch TV. Is that big enough for you?
That is like the ultimate man TV.
That's right. Come around, watch the footy at my place. I've got a 65-inch. No, I've got an 85-inch. No, I've got a 1,000-inch. Okay, you win.
Yeah.
All bets are off. So this is not the sort of normal thing you'd put in your lounge room for a few reasons. One, you'd struggle to find most people with 1,000 inches of wall space in their lounge room. So that's a minor problem. Cost is another problem, but I'll come back to that. This is actually a TV from Samsung called The Wall. And it's pretty appropriate because I reckon you could just about replace a wall with this TV. Obviously, it's not really designed for lounge rooms around the world, but sure, what the heck, put it in your lounge room if you want. It's really designed for that large retail environment, for the shopping centre environment, maybe even a large shop that you really want to grab some attention there. but it's pretty impressive as a TV. When you look at the raw specs of it, it's pretty impressive overall. It's using micro LEDs. Sometimes you see those really big TVs and you get up close and each pixel is about the size of your hand. These have got micro LEDs, so they're actually quite good in terms of its resolution. It's got an 8K resolution with a 120Hz refresh rate, but you can actually reconfigure it. So, for example, you could turn it into an ultra-wide 15,000 by 2,000 16K resolution. So that's pretty cool. And the brightness of it. Most of these are going to be installed in places where you've got some natural light coming in. So, for example, in a shopping centre, you've got a lot of natural light coming through. So these have got 1,600 nits. And just to give you an idea, if you're not sure how bright 1,600 nits is, a OLED TV, a popular OLED TV, say 65-inch OLED TV, would typically be about 1,000 nits. So 1,600 nits is quite impressive. And again, it has to be quite impressive because you want to be able to hang it up in that environment where it's got some natural light. As far as cost is concerned, I thought it would be relevant while we're having this discussion to tell you how much it costs. But I can't tell you how much it costs. I looked everywhere trying to find the cost of it. In the end, I ended up on a Samsung site where I said, I want to buy one of these. I had to fill in a form, send off the inquiry, and I'm now waiting for the price to come back to me. When they don't advertise the price anywhere, you know it's going to be a scary price. Giving you an idea, you can buy TVs now that are, 65, 75, 85-inch. They're all what I'd call normal-ish prices. You can get TVs that are 110-inch, 120-inch. So those sort of prices start to get up to $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. So 1,000-inch, I wouldn't be surprised if I don't get a quote back to say maybe $500,000, maybe more. So it's going to be a lot, but I'll tell you next week what I find out if I finally get a response back from Samsung.
Oh, yeah. I don't know where you're buying TVs from, man. I went shopping at Aldi the other day. I could get a 75-inch LED TV at Aldi for $9.99. I don't know where you're buying $10,000 TVs from, but... Well,
that's not a bad point. 75-inch, go and put 10 of those together. 10 times 75, surely that's a 750-inch. And that's only 10 grand. Yeah. That sounds pretty cheap to me.
That's it. And it had all the apps on it as well. So if you want to watch your Netflix and your Stan and all the rest of it, they're already there.
There you go.
Done deal.
Ching, ching, quick ad for Aldi there.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Bing. I actually said to the wife, we went looking for milk, and of course we went through the centre aisle because that's what you do. And she was going, we need milk, we need that. I said, do we need a 75-inch TV? She went, no.
That's the problem, isn't it? You go down to pick up milk, you come home with a TV.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, computers, we've all got old computers somewhere around the joint. But what happens when your 30-year-old computer dies, Matt? You're 540 Ks above the earth.
Yeah, that's a bit of a problem. Most people probably don't have a 30-year-old computer, but what we do have is computers that are 3, 4, maybe 5 years old. And when they die, when the hard drive dies, or it's just basically getting to the stage where it's glitching and not running properly, it's pretty easy. We stick it in the cupboard to sit there for the next 10 years, and we go and buy a new one. But when your computer is 540 Ks above the earth, you can't just slip down to Aldi and get that new computer on the shelf and go and update that. You're going to have to do something a bit cleverer. And this is the problem that NASA's been facing with their Hubble Space Telescope. Of course, it launched over 30 years ago. It's been doing a wonderful job up there at 540 kilometres above the Earth, getting away from the Earth's atmosphere, taking some magnificent images across the entire universe. But then one of the computers started having a bit of a technical glitch. And that's a bit of a problem because one of the things is if you've got an issue on the telescope, you need to be able to get remote access from Earth to be able to fix the problem. But if the computer you're remote accessing to has got the problem, then how do you get to it? So they've been working around for about the last month, believe it or not, trying to work out some way to not have this wonderful Hubble Space Telescope turn into a bit of junk that's just floating around up in space. They've got redundancy built in. They've got a backup or a replication of every single computer component on the Space Telescope. But again, getting access was the real issue. They finally managed to do it. Happy days. Yay. Everyone celebrate. We've now got the Hubble Space Telescope back in operation because they've been able to convert over to the secondary computer, which is pretty much the same as the first computer, but when the first one died, they switched over to the second one and the secondary power supply unit as well. So you can imagine the design work that would be going into that 30 years ago to say, hey, What happens when something goes wrong and we're 30 or 540 kilometres away? What happens in, say, 30 years' time? It's a fair bit of forward planning, I think, from NASA all those years ago to be able to have it to the point where they could actually switch over to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I just put the word out now to NASA? If they need some 30-year-old computer parts, I know where there's an old 486 sitting in my parents' cupboard. Because seriously, Matt, my parents still have the first computer that we ever bought.
Well, maybe they might need that for the next one. They're launching the James Webb Space Telescope, and that's launching later on this year. So maybe they want your old 486 from your parents' house for that one.
Could do. No, seriously, if you want some old 486 computer parts, I know where it is literally sitting in a cupboard, Matt, doing nothing. I don't know why they still keep it. And seriously, my dad turned around and I said, why do you still have this? I might need it one day.
Well, look, the important question I think for your parents would be, was it the SX or was it the DX? Because that would make all the difference for NASA.
No, it was the DX.
DX, well, that's fine. One. That could do the mathematical calculations that they would need on the Space Telescope. So, yep, give them a call.
Yeah, I wonder if I can still play my old version of Test Drive that I had on. Jeez, that was a good game, Matt. Now, should we trust major organisations, Matt, especially when they're doing good faith deals? You know, conspiracy theorists are going to just answer you with no.
Well, I would probably answer with no as well. And this is exactly what happened over in France. Google, as we know, was put under a bit of pressure across the world, including here in Australia, to come up with some deals with news organisations to pay those news organisations money for their content. And in Australia, that went on for a while. There was a fair bit of argy-bargy. Australia is one of the first countries in the world to really push this whole envelope. And we got a pretty good outcome because the government basically made them do it. In France, they said to Google, look, just in good faith, go and do that bit of a negotiation, will you? That was a year ago. No surprises here. The good faith negotiations basically meant, but we'll pay you nothing and we'll keep using your information. That sounds like a pretty good deal for us, which was Google talking. Of course, that wasn't a great deal for the news organisations. So the French government has now stepped in and they've fined Google 500 million euros because they didn't negotiate a good deal. And basically they've got to now go and get a deal together with the news organisations after having paid that 500 million euros. That might make them sit up a little bit and take a little bit of notice. I'm not sure. 500 million euros is still a fair amount of money, but in the whole scheme of things for Google, they probably thought they were better off not paying the money to the news organisations for the last year and just cop the fine. I'm not sure. But now they will have to basically come up with those negotiations, pay the news organisations some money, otherwise they'll be hit with another fine. More and more countries around the world are going down this path, enforcing places like Facebook, like Google, to actually pay money to these news organisations. And that's good because that means, especially in a democratic society, we want strong news organisations to keep an eye on what our governments might be doing. So I think this is a good outcome, but interesting to note that the French fines have not just stopped at that $500 million fine. They've actually had a few fines over the last year where they fined some companies, including Google, 150 million euro, 220 million euro. In fact, they fined Apple 1.1 billion euro because they were engaging in what they called anti-competitive behaviour. So they're getting a bit stricter on some of these big organisations. It's a bit of a shame that these big organisations need to have someone sitting over the top of them refereeing their behaviour or the way they're going about things, but that's the world we live in at the moment.
Absolutely. Now, finally, go and have a look at your phone because there could be something on there, Matt, that you didn't know was on there.
There's probably lots of things on there that aren't on there, but spyware is probably the worst thing that could be on there. And if you're a journo, if you're a politician, you might have had Pegasus spy software on your phone without knowing about it. Now, Pegasus spy software is a private spy software sold by an Israeli company to, effectively, it used to be governments, and they were sold to governments to keep an eye on anti-terrorist behaviour. But it seems like many companies, if someone wants to offer them money, they'll take the money and give them their product. So they've been selling their software, Pegasus spy software, to pretty much, it seems like, anyone that wants to pay the money for it. Now, of course, they're saying they're not. They're saying that this is something that we haven't authorised. We've only sold it to legitimate governments. But I'm not convinced of that behaviour. So the hacking software, or spyware, if you want to call it that, has basically been installed on 50,000 or more phones around the world, again, journalists and politicians. And what it allows them to do effectively is watch everything that those people are doing. So when governments are talking about confidential decisions or discussion amongst the parliamentarians about things that might be happening or going forward, they've been able to see this. When journalists might be talking about news stories coming forward, or even the fact that they might have some sources and they might be getting some information from some people, suddenly the information, including those source names, might be being leaked out there. So it's pretty scary stuff in terms of this information. So, and again, if you look at the past, you might think they might have been subject to some phishing attacks. In other words, a journo might have received an email, they've clicked on something, so they're a bit silly about it. But they've been able to actually exploit some zero-click maneuvers where they don't even need you to click on something. They can actually make a phone call, for example, through an app, and suddenly that's enough to infect your phone with this particular spyware.
That's crazy.
You miss the call, you don't think much of it. You go, oh, which someone rang me, whatever, and you hang up on the call, or you don't even actually hang up on the call, it just stops ringing. Meanwhile, you've just had some spyware or malware inserted onto your phone. So I suppose the real message here is keep an eye on anything that your phone does which seems a little bit unusual. Now, I don't want to alert the conspiracy theorists and have everything that happens on their phone suddenly be leaked information out there, but in this case, it's actually quite possible that is what's happening.
It's amazing how far this is going now. Yeah. Lucky I don't keep anything on my phone. But my wife turns around to me and goes, you have zero security on your phone? I'm like, yeah. I'm one of these people that if you're going to get me, just get me. You ain't going to find anything. You're just going to find pictures of my dog.
That's right.
There's a couple of pictures of my wife on the phone.
And that's the thing. You mightn't think as much on your phone, but even just things like that, pictures of your family, pictures of your dog, just photos on there that you might not necessarily want anyone having, but you might have discussions about just your radio station, about some advertisers on your radio station. You don't probably want other people looking at who's advertising with your radio station or what rates they might be paying. So even though you mightn't think too much about it, everyone's probably got some information on their phone they don't really want out there. And it's not saying that you're doing anything wrong. It just might be information about your workplace, about your business, about your family, things that you just don't really want out there in the public forum.
Yeah. Well, if you would like to have a conversation about our ad rates here at Magic 87.6, you can find our phone number on our Facebook page. Give me a call. I'll get you an ad on the air.
Talk about cash for comment today.
I know. Well, you led me there, Matt, and our segment leads into an ad break, so I need to place a bet so we can stay on the air.